With either of those combinations, the children would come out medium generation after generation, like the Orientals, Polynesians, American Indians, etc. But where people get back together again, you're back to no more and no less variation than God built into just two people. Phenomenal. And it's not just skin color. Let me ask you another question. What's one thing Adam and Eve couldn't do? Okay. Sing in 4-part harmony, right? Okay. But interestingly enough, the genes for the natural singing ranges for men and women is just one pair of genes. If you have the 2 capital letter genes or capital lowercase or 2 lowercase, you have high, medium, or low range for men and women. There are degenerate mutants like me that have no singing range at all, but most people fit in it. All that information stored in just 2 people. It's phenomenal. Next slide. Okay. And so this just shows the maximum variation. And next slide. That's some of that, by the way, is in a children's book. Brian, did you guys bring books with Rocky Mountain? Okay, I've got a few books. This is a children's book of ours you can get from either Answers in Genesis or the Institute for Creation Research that has about Neanderthal man. By the way, if you want to ask any questions about that, Neanderthal man, cavemen, and how close are cavemen to us and where do cavemen fit into the Bible and so on. That would be a really good one for questions and so on, because they still talk about things like that. And Lucy and all of these things were once thought to be missing links between apes and man. And it talks about how we all go back to Adam and Eve, and all this variation would be present in just 2 people. Next slide. So this entelechy, notice it's expressing potential. It was already there in the beginning, unlike evolution. It shuffles genes that already exist. You don't have to make up new genes. The genes are already there, just like a deck of playing cards. You can play something like bridge forever, and never get the same hand again. It's just amazing, just 52 cards and all the variation you can get. There is a trend. When the ark landed, and the bears got off the ark, anybody who was there to watch would have said, oh, look at the bears. They would look like bears. They would act like bears. But in just a few generations, as they multiplied and filled the earth, they would break up into black bears, brown bears, grizzly bears, polar bears, panda bears. All of those things, just descendants of variation within kind, adaptable to adapted. They start off with a wide range of diets, a wide range of climates, and then they tend to specialize. They live best in this environment, eating this food and so on. And that happens, but that's not evolution. That's sorting out the genes that already exist, variation within kind. And it's planned ahead, it's fast. And so as the animals got off the ark, this only took a few hundred years to break up into all the groups that we have today. Not millions and billions of years, but very, very quickly. And there's no struggle or death. So this would have happened even before man's sin ruined God's world, as the animals begin to multiply and fill the earth. Okay, next slide. And then this one's one I'll skip over, I think, right now. But there's the most fundamental definition in population genetics, or a fundamental law, is a Hardy-Weinberg law, which actually says that if you just leave it up to time and chance, the genes in one generation are the same as the genes in the next. Which means what? No evolution. And so for evolutionists, they call this, well, they don't call it, I call it for them, genetic inertia, resistance to change. And for the creationists, the law of conservation of genetic variability. Next slide. And there are factors, though, that upset the genes that are passed from one generation to the other. Mutations, natural selection, and reproductive isolation. Let's take a look at mutations. Next slide. Mutations are certainly real, there's no doubt about that. Mutations, yes. Evolution, no. And may I kind of encourage you to say it kind of that way. You don't have to, but sometimes, evolutionists get uptight or upset. They think you don't know that mutations occur. If you don't believe in evolution, they'll say, you don't believe in change? Well, you explain that. You don't believe in mutations? Oh, yeah, I do. That's how I explain disease organisms, and birth defects. And so the big problem with mutations, those are random accidental changes in genes. And those things make a mess out of the human body. They make a mess out of plants and animals. They make a mess out of bacteria. And yet there's a biology book, fortunately this one was published in Australia, used in Australian schools, that actually gives us an example. It says, imagine, a smoothly running engine in a car. And it says most times if you had a smoothly running engine in a car and you tossed in a monkey wrench, it would not run as smoothly as it did before. I think we can pretty well guarantee that. But the book went on to say, but yet once in a while, just throwing junk into the engine, you get an engine that worked better. I think I bought a car from that dealer. But it just doesn't happen that way. And the mutations are real, but all of the examples we know of mutations are things that cause disease and defects and decline, not at all upward, onward progress. And of course, all the genes that we know anything about, maybe I'll just emphasize that one more. I'll just say this too, change in genes that already exist. And so it's just variation within kind, not producing new kinds of genes. And some of you, I think, know this. I know there's a video out, The Answers in Genesis. I had a part in producing called Frog to Prince, and they're interviewing a famous, British evolutionist, Richard Dawkins, author of The Blind Watchmaker, and the world's leading spokesman for evolution now that Gould and Sagan are dead. And so they had him interview, and he was talking about how mutations, these random changes in genes, like the woodpecker getting hit by a cosmic ray, how this is a pathway of progress. And the interviewer just asked, on the film with the camera rolling, Professor Dawkins, would you give us an example of a mutation, random change in genes, that adds information? And Dawkins had been a real slick talker all the way up to